Your mind can become your greatest weapon, or your worst enemy. Every single day, millions of people destroy their peace with negative thoughts they never learn to control. They overthink every situation. They replay painful memories. They imagine worst-case scenarios that haven't even happened. And slowly, without realizing it, negativity begins poisoning their confidence, energy, discipline, and happiness. The dangerous part is this: negative thinking often feels normal. People become so used to anxiety, fear, doubt, and overthinking that they no longer notice how much damage it causes internally. But Marcus Aurelius understood something powerful over 2,000 years ago. Your thoughts shape your reality. If you cannot control your mind will control you. Stoicism teaches that peace is not found by controlling the outside world. Peace is found by mastering your inner world. Because no matter where you go, your mind follows you. You can change cities, relationships, jobs, or environments, but if your thinking remains negative, suffering follows you everywhere. Most people wake up and immediately feed their mind poison. They think about problems before opportunities, fear before gratitude, failure before possibility. They focus on what could go wrong instead of what could go right. And after repeating those patterns daily for years, negativity becomes automatic. But the Stoics believed something different. They believed the human mind could be trained, strengthened, disciplined, controlled. Just like the body becomes stronger through exercise, the mind becomes stronger through conscious thought and self-awareness. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that external events are not what destroy us. Our interpretation of those events destroys us. Two people can experience the exact same problem while reacting completely differently. One person collapses emotionally. The other remains calm and focused. The difference is mindset. Negative thoughts are dangerous because they distort reality. They make temporary problems feel permanent. They make fear appear larger than it truly is. They convince you that failure defines your future. They whisper lies repeatedly until you begin believing them as truth. And most people never question those thoughts. They accept every negative idea automatically. A Stoic does not do that. A Stoic observes thoughts carefully before believing them. This changes everything. Imagine your mind as a garden. Every thought is a seed. Positive thoughts create discipline, peace, gratitude, and confidence. Negative thoughts create fear, jealousy, insecurity, anger, and anxiety. Whatever thoughts you water daily eventually grows stronger. Most people unknowingly water negativity every day. They constantly focus on problems, drama, fear, and comparison. Then they wonder why their peace disappears. But your mind absorbs whatever you repeatedly feed it. That is why mental discipline matters. One negative thought may seem harmless initially, but repeated thoughts become beliefs. Beliefs become habits. Habits shape identity, and identity shapes your entire life. If you constantly think, "I'm not good enough," eventually your actions begin reflecting that belief. You hesitate more. You doubt yourself more. You avoid opportunities. You become afraid of failure. And slowly, your own mind becomes your prison. Marcus Aurelius warned about this constantly. He understood that uncontrolled thoughts create unnecessary suffering. Think about how many people destroy their peace by imagining situations that never happen. They create fake arguments inside their mind. They replay embarrassing moments for years. They fear rejection before even trying. They assume people secretly hate them. They expect failure before beginning. This is the trap of overthinking. Overthinking creates emotional exhaustion because the mind never rests. It constantly searches for danger, problems, and uncertainty. And eventually, anxiety becomes a lifestyle instead of a temporary emotion. But Stoicism teaches that most suffering is self-created mentally. That realization is powerful because it means freedom is possible. If thoughts can create suffering, disciplined thoughts can create peace. The first step to killing negative thoughts is awareness. You cannot change mental patterns you never notice. Most people are completely unconscious of how often they think negatively. They allow destructive thoughts to run automatically all day long. The Stoic interrupts this pattern by becoming aware. Every time negativity appears, pause and observe it. Ask yourself, is this thought actually true? Is this thought helping me? Is this thought based on reality or fear? Many negative thoughts collapse immediately once examined logically. For example, imagine failing at something once and thinking, "I'll never succeed." That thought is emotional, not logical. One failure does not determine your entire future. But emotional thinking often exaggerates temporary setbacks into permanent identities. Stoicism trains rational thinking instead of emotional thinking. Emotions are temporary. Logic creates stability. This does not mean ignoring emotions completely. Stoicism is not emotional suppression. It is emotional mastery. Marcus Aurelius often reflected privately to examine his thoughts carefully. He understood that self-awareness was essential for emotional discipline. Without self-awareness, negative thinking becomes automatic. One of the strongest ways to destroy negative thinking is gratitude. Gratitude shifts focus from what is missing to what already exists. Most people train their minds to notice problems constantly. But the human mind becomes stronger in whatever direction you repeatedly focus attention. If you always focus on lack, life feels empty. If you focus on gratitude, peace grows naturally. This does not mean pretending life is perfect. Stoicism is realistic, not delusional. Problems exist. Pain exists. Difficulty exists. But gratitude prevents negativity from completely consuming your perspective. Even during difficult seasons, there is always something to appreciate. Health, growth, lessons, opportunity, survival, wisdom gained through suffering. Gratitude creates emotional balance. Negative thinking often traps people inside victim mentality. They begin believing life is only happening against them. They forget how much strength they already possess. But Stoicism teaches resilience instead of victimhood. Every challenge contains opportunity for growth. Every difficulty can strengthen character if approached correctly. Every painful experience can teach wisdom. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that obstacles are part of life. Expecting life to be permanently comfortable creates frustration. But accepting challenges calmly creates resilience. Negative thoughts often come from resistance to reality. People suffer because reality does not match their expectations. They want life without pain, success without struggle, peace without discipline. But life naturally includes discomfort. Stoicism teaches acceptance instead of emotional resistance. Acceptance does not mean weakness. It means seeing reality clearly without unnecessary emotional chaos. For example, if something difficult happens, negative thinking may say, "Why does this always happen to me?" But Stoic thinking says, "This happened. Now how do I respond wisely?" That shift changes everything. One mindset creates helplessness. The other creates power. The Stoic focuses energy on what can actually be controlled. Thoughts, actions, habits, responses, discipline, character. Most negativity comes from obsessing over things outside your control. Other people's opinions, the past, uncertainty about the future, random events. But worrying endlessly about uncontrollable things only destroys peace. Marcus Aurelius believed freedom begins the moment you stop trying to control everything externally. Focus on your own mind first. That is where real power exists. Negative thinking also weakens discipline. When the mind becomes filled with doubt and fear, action becomes harder. People procrastinate because they fear failure. They avoid opportunities because they fear rejection. They remain stuck because negativity convinces them change is impossible. But disciplined action destroys many negative thoughts automatically. Confidence grows through action, not endless thinking. Many people wait to feel confident before taking action. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. Action creates confidence over time. The moment you begin moving forward despite fear, your mind changes slowly. Every difficult action you complete weakens negativity slightly. Every challenge you survive proves your strength. Every moment you resist fear builds resilience. Negative thoughts hate disciplined action because action exposes many fears as illusions. Most fears grow larger inside the imagination than reality itself. Think about how often people fear situations that end up being manageable once faced directly. Anxiety exaggerates uncertainty, but experience creates clarity. That is why courage matters. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting despite fear. The Stoic understands that waiting for perfect emotional certainty is impossible. Fear will always exist sometimes. Doubt will always appear sometimes. But action matters more than temporary emotions. Negative thinking also thrives during idleness. An undisciplined mind easily drifts toward anxiety, overthinking, and emotional chaos. But purpose creates direction. When you have goals, structure, discipline, and meaning, negativity loses space to dominate your mind completely. This is why routines matter deeply. Morning routines, exercise, reading, reflection, meditation, journaling, learning. These habits strengthen mental stability over time. The mind becomes calmer when disciplined consistently. Most people underestimate how much physical health affects mental health too. Poor sleep, lack of exercise, overstimulation, and unhealthy habits weaken emotional resilience dramatically. Stoicism views the mind and body as deeply connected. A disciplined lifestyle strengthens both mental clarity and emotional control. Another dangerous aspect of negative thinking is comparison. Social media has intensified comparison more than ever before. People constantly compare their appearance, success, relationships, money, and lifestyle against others online. But comparison destroys peace because you begin measuring your worth through external standards instead of internal growth. Your mind can become your greatest weapon, or your worst enemy. Every single day, millions of people destroy their peace with negative thoughts they never learn to control. They overthink every situation. They replay painful memories. They imagine worst-case scenarios that haven't even happened. And slowly, without realizing it, negativity begins poisoning their confidence, energy, discipline, and happiness. The dangerous part is this: negative thinking often feels normal. People become so used to anxiety, fear, doubt, and overthinking that they no longer notice how much damage it causes internally. But Marcus Aurelius understood something powerful over 2,000 years ago: your thoughts shape your reality. If you cannot control your mind will control you. Stoicism teaches that peace is not found by controlling the outside world. Peace is found by mastering your inner world. Because no matter where you go, your mind follows you. You can change cities, relationships, jobs, or environments, but if your thinking remains negative, suffering follows you everywhere. Most people wake up and immediately feed their mind poison. They think about problems before opportunities, fear before gratitude, failure before possibility. They focus on what could go wrong instead of what could go right. And after repeating those patterns daily for years, negativity becomes automatic. But the Stoics believe something different. They believe the human mind could be trained, strengthened, disciplined, controlled. Just like the body becomes stronger through exercise, the mind becomes stronger through conscious thought and self-awareness. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that external events are not what destroy us. Our interpretation of those events destroys us. Two people can experience the exact same problem while reacting completely differently. One person collapses emotionally. The other remains calm and focused. The difference is mindset. Negative thoughts are dangerous because they distort reality. They make temporary problems feel permanent. They make fear appear larger than it truly is. They convince you that failure defines your future. They whisper lies repeatedly until you begin believing them as truth. And most people never question those thoughts. They accept every negative idea automatically. A Stoic does not do that. A Stoic observes thoughts carefully before believing them. This changes everything. Imagine your mind as a garden. Every thought is a seed. Positive thoughts create discipline, peace, gratitude, and confidence. Negative thoughts create fear, jealousy, insecurity, anger, and anxiety. Whatever thoughts you water daily eventually grows stronger. Most people unknowingly water negativity every day. They constantly focus on problems, drama, fear, and comparison. Then they wonder why their peace disappears. But your mind absorbs whatever you repeatedly feed it. That is why mental discipline matters. One negative thought may seem harmless initially, but repeated thoughts become beliefs. Beliefs become habits. Habits shape identity, and identity shapes your entire life. If you constantly think, "I'm not good enough," eventually your actions begin reflecting that belief. You hesitate more. You doubt yourself more. You avoid opportunities. You become afraid of failure. And slowly, your own mind becomes your prison. Marcus Aurelius warned about this constantly. He understood that uncontrolled thoughts create unnecessary suffering. Think about how many people destroy their peace by imagining situations that never happen. They create fake arguments inside their mind. They replay embarrassing moments for years. They fear rejection before even trying. They assume people secretly hate them. They expect failure before beginning. This is the trap of overthinking. Overthinking creates emotional exhaustion because the mind never rests. It constantly searches for danger, problems, and uncertainty. And eventually, anxiety becomes a lifestyle instead of a temporary emotion. But Stoicism teaches that most suffering is self-created mentally. That realization is powerful because it means freedom is possible. If thoughts can create suffering, disciplined thoughts can create peace. The first step to killing negative thoughts is awareness. You cannot change mental patterns you never notice. Most people are completely unconscious of how often they think negatively. They allow destructive thoughts to run automatically all day long. The Stoic interrupts this pattern by becoming aware. Every time negativity appears, pause and observe it. Ask yourself, is this thought actually true? Is this thought helping me? Is this thought based on reality or fear? Many negative thoughts collapse immediately once examined logically. For example, imagine failing at something once and thinking, "I'll never succeed." That thought is emotional, not logical. One failure does not determine your entire future. But emotional thinking often exaggerates temporary setbacks into permanent identities. Stoicism trains rational thinking instead of emotional thinking. Emotions are temporary. Logic creates stability. This does not mean ignoring emotions completely. Stoicism is not emotional suppression. It is emotional mastery. A Stoic feels emotions but refuses to become controlled by them blindly. Negative thinking often begins with emotional impulses. Fear creates catastrophic thoughts. Anger creates destructive thoughts. Insecurity creates comparison. But once awareness enters the situation, those thoughts lose power. Awareness creates distance between you and your mind. Instead of becoming every thought you experience, you begin observing thoughts calmly. That observation alone weakens negativity dramatically. Imagine clouds passing through the sky. Thoughts work the same way. They appear temporarily, then disappear. But most people cling to negative thoughts instead of letting them pass naturally. They repeat them endlessly until the mind becomes overwhelmed. The Stoic learns not to attach identity to every thought. Just because your mind says something negative does not automatically make it true. This lesson alone can transform your life. Many people suffer not because reality is terrible, but because their thoughts about reality are terrible. A person may experience criticism and think, "Everyone hates me." Another person experiences criticism and thinks, "This is an opportunity to improve." Same situation. Different mindset. Different emotional outcome. Your interpretation shapes your experience. That is why controlling your thoughts is one of the highest forms of power. Modern society constantly feeds negativity into people's minds. Fear sells. Drama spreads faster than peace. Social media rewards outrage, comparison, insecurity, and emotional reactions. And because people consume negativity daily, their minds slowly become conditioned toward pessimism. This is why protecting your mental environment matters deeply. If you constantly surround yourself with negativity, negative thinking becomes inevitable. Imagine drinking poison every day while expecting your body to remain healthy. That would make no sense. Yet many people consume mental poison constantly through toxic conversations, endless comparison, destructive media, and negative environments while expecting peace internally. Stoicism teaches intentional mental consumption. Protect what enters your mind. Your thoughts are shaped by what you repeatedly expose yourself to. Conversations matter. Music matters. Content matters. Environments matter. Relationships matter. Negative people spread negativity like a virus. Spend enough time around constant complaining, gossip, fear, and bitterness, and eventually your mindset begins changing too. This is why Stoics valued solitude and reflection. Silence helps reset the mind. When your mind constantly absorbs noise from the world, clarity disappears. But moments of stillness allow awareness to return. Marcus Aurelius often reflected privately to examine his thoughts carefully. He understood that self-awareness was essential for emotional discipline. Without self-awareness, negative thinking becomes automatic. One of the strongest ways to destroy negative thinking is gratitude. Gratitude shifts focus from what is missing to what already exists. Most people train their minds to notice problems constantly. But the human mind becomes stronger in whatever direction you repeatedly focus attention. If you always focus on lack, life feels empty. If you focus on gratitude, peace grows naturally. This does not mean pretending life is perfect. Stoicism is realistic, not delusional. Problems exist. Pain exists. Difficulty exists. But gratitude prevents negativity from completely consuming your perspective. Even during difficult seasons, there is always something to appreciate. Health, growth, lessons, opportunity, survival, wisdom gained through suffering. Gratitude creates emotional balance. Negative thinking often traps people inside victim mentality. They begin believing life is only happening against them. They forget how much strength they already possess. But Stoicism teaches resilience instead of victimhood. Every challenge contains opportunity for growth. Every difficulty can strengthen character if approached correctly. Every painful experience can teach wisdom. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that obstacles are part of life. Expecting life to be permanently comfortable creates frustration. But accepting challenges calmly creates resilience. Negative thoughts often come from resistance to reality. People suffer because reality does not match their expectations. They want life without pain, success without struggle, peace without discipline. But life naturally includes discomfort. Stoicism teaches acceptance instead of emotional resistance. Acceptance does not mean weakness. It means seeing reality clearly without unnecessary emotional chaos. For example, if something difficult happens, negative thinking may say, "Why does this always happen to me?" But Stoic thinking says, "This happened. Now how do I respond wisely?" That shift changes everything. One mindset creates helplessness. The other creates power. The Stoic focuses energy on what can actually be controlled. Thoughts, actions, habits, responses, discipline, character. Most negativity comes from obsessing over things outside your control. Other people's opinions, the past, uncertainty about the future, random events. But worrying endlessly about uncontrollable things only destroys peace. Marcus Aurelius believed freedom begins the moment you stop trying to control everything externally. Focus on your own mind first. That is where real power exists. Negative thinking also weakens discipline. When the mind becomes filled with doubt and fear, action becomes harder. People procrastinate because they fear failure. They avoid opportunities because they fear rejection. They remain stuck because negativity convinces them change is impossible. But disciplined action destroys many negative thoughts automatically. Confidence grows through action, not endless thinking. Many people wait to feel confident before taking action. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. Action creates confidence over time. The moment you begin moving forward despite fear, your mind changes slowly. Every difficult action you complete weakens negativity slightly. Every challenge you survive proves your strength. Every moment you resist fear builds resilience. Negative thoughts hate disciplined action because action exposes many fears as illusions. Most fears grow larger inside the imagination than reality itself. Think about how often people fear situations that end up being manageable once faced directly. Anxiety exaggerates uncertainty, but experience creates clarity. That is why courage matters. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting despite fear. The Stoic understands that waiting for perfect emotional certainty is impossible. Fear will always exist sometimes. Doubt will always appear sometimes. But action matters more than temporary emotions. Negative thinking also thrives during idleness. An undisciplined mind easily drifts toward anxiety, overthinking, and emotional chaos. But purpose creates direction. When you have goals, structure, discipline, and meaning, negativity loses space to dominate your mind completely. This is why routines matter deeply. Morning routines, exercise, reading, reflection, meditation, journaling, learning. These habits strengthen mental stability over time. The mind becomes calmer when disciplined consistently. Most people underestimate how much physical health affects mental health too. Poor sleep, lack of exercise, overstimulation, and unhealthy habits weaken emotional resilience dramatically. Stoicism views the mind and body as deeply connected. A disciplined lifestyle strengthens both mental clarity and emotional control. Another dangerous aspect of negative thinking is comparison. Social media has intensified comparison more than ever before. People constantly compare their appearance, success, relationships, money, and lifestyle against others online. But comparison destroys peace because you begin measuring your worth through external standards instead of internal growth. Marcus Aurelius warned against obsession with external status. He understood that chasing approval endlessly creates emptiness. There will always be someone richer, more attractive, more successful, more popular. If your happiness depends on being better than everyone else, peace becomes impossible. The Stoic focuses on self-improvement instead of competition. Become better than yesterday's version of yourself. That is enough. Inner growth matters more than external comparison. Negative thinking often comes from unrealistic expectations too. People expect perfection from themselves constantly. One mistake makes them feel worthless. One setback feels like failure. But perfection is impossible. Stoicism teaches progress instead of perfection. Every human being struggles. Every human being fails sometimes. Every human being experiences weakness occasionally. The goal is not becoming flawless. The goal is becoming wiser and stronger gradually over time. Self-compassion matters here. Many people speak to themselves more harshly than they would ever speak to another person. Their internal dialogue becomes cruel and destructive. But the Stoic understands that growth requires patience. Discipline does not mean self-hatred. Correct yourself calmly instead of destroying yourself mentally. Negative thoughts lose power when your internal voice becomes wiser and more balanced. And finally, remember this deeply: you are not your thoughts. This may be one of the most important lessons in Stoicism. Thoughts are temporary mental events, not permanent identity. A negative thought appearing in your mind does not define who you are. Fear appearing does not make you weak. Anxiety appearing does not make you broken. Doubt appearing does not determine your future. What matters is how you respond to those thoughts. Do you feed them? Or do you observe them calmly and let them pass? The Stoic chooses awareness over emotional slavery. That is true mental freedom. Most people remain prisoners of their own mind because they never learned this skill. But once you realize you can observe thoughts without obeying them automatically, everything changes. Peace becomes possible again. Clarity becomes possible again. Strength becomes possible again. So kill negative thinking before it kills your peace. Protect your mind like your life depends on it, because in many ways it does. Train your thoughts daily. Discipline your focus. Guard your mental environment. Take action despite fear. practice gratitude. Accept reality calmly. Focus only on what you can control. Because the mind can either become your prison or your greatest source of power. Please subscribe for more. Most people spend their entire lives searching for power in the wrong places. They search for it in money, status, attention, relationships, followers, validation, and approval. They believe power comes from being admired by the world. But Stoic philosophers understood a deeper truth that modern society has forgotten. Real power is built internally, in silence, far away from the noise of the crowd. The strongest people are not always the loudest. They are not always the most popular. They are not constantly seeking attention. Often, the most powerful individuals move quietly because their strength does not depend on applause. Their confidence is built from discipline, solitude, emotional control, and inner peace. That is why silence can become dangerous. Because once a person learns to master themselves in silence, they become almost impossible to control. Most people fear being alone. The moment silence enters their life, discomfort begins. They immediately search for distractions. Social media, entertainment, relationships, noise, constant stimulation. Anything to avoid sitting alone with their own thoughts. Because silence forces people to confront themselves honestly. And that is terrifying for many people. When distractions disappear, unresolved emotions rise to the surface. Fear appears. Anxiety appears. Insecurity appears. Regret appears. And instead of facing those emotions, people run from them endlessly. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. It teaches that silence is not something to fear. Silence is something to master. The title of this video is not just a phrase. Build your inner power in silence is a mindset, a way of living, a philosophy that transforms weak minds into unshakable ones. The world today rewards noise. Everyone wants to be noticed. Everyone wants instant validation. Everyone wants attention immediately. People announce every move they make, every goal, every achievement, every emotion. But Stoicism teaches that true growth often happens privately, quietly, in the shadows where nobody is clapping for you. Think about a seed beneath the ground. Before anyone sees the tree, growth happens silently underground. Roots develop in darkness before strength becomes visible externally. Human beings are no different. Your deepest growth happens internally long before the world notices externally. Many people want visible success without invisible discipline. They want confidence without discomfort. They want strength without suffering. But inner power is not built through comfort. It is built through struggle, reflection, discipline, and silence. Silence teaches you who you really are. When you spend time alone intentionally, without distractions, something powerful begins happening. You start observing your own mind clearly. You notice your habits, your weaknesses, your fears, your emotional triggers. And although this process can feel uncomfortable at first, it becomes the foundation of transformation. Because the person who understands themselves deeply becomes harder to manipulate. Most people are controlled by emotions they barely understand. Anger controls them. Fear controls them. Desire controls them. Validation controls them. They react impulsively because they never developed awareness of their internal world. But the Stoic trained self-awareness constantly. Marcus Aurelius often reflected alone despite being emperor of Rome. Imagine that. One of the most powerful men in the world still understood the importance of silence and reflection. He knew external power meant nothing without inner stability. And that lesson matters more today than ever before. Modern society constantly attacks your focus. Notifications steal your attention. Opinions influence your thoughts. Trends pressure your identity. Endless distractions pull your mind in every direction. And slowly, many people lose connection with themselves completely. That is why solitude has become rare and powerful. A person who can sit alone peacefully without needing constant stimulation possesses a strength most people never develop. Because they are no longer emotionally dependent on the external world for peace. Their stability comes from within. This is what Stoicism teaches. If your happiness depends entirely on external circumstances, your peace will always remain fragile. Money can disappear. Relationships can end. Popularity can fade. Circumstances can change overnight. But if your mind is disciplined, calm, and grounded internally, you remain strong even during chaos. That is inner power. Inner power is not loud aggression. It is not arrogance. It is not domination over others. Real power is emotional control, mental clarity, self-discipline, patience, calmness under pressure, the ability to remain centered while the world around you becomes chaotic. Anyone can react emotionally. Anyone can lose control during stress. But remaining calm when provoked requires enormous strength. Silence trains that strength. When you spend time away from constant noise, your thinking becomes sharper. You begin hearing your own thoughts again instead of absorbing everyone else's opinions. And once your mind becomes clearer, your decisions improve. Your confidence improves. Your emotional stability improves. One of the biggest reasons people remain mentally weak is because they never spend enough time alone to truly understand themselves. They know everybody else deeply but barely know their own mind. They understand celebrities, trends, strangers online, and endless gossip, yet they cannot sit quietly with themselves for 10 minutes without feeling restless. That restlessness reveals dependence. Dependence on distraction. Dependence on stimulation. Dependence on external validation. The Stoic breaks free from that dependence. Instead of escaping silence, the Stoic enters silence willingly because silence reveals truth. And truth creates transformation. Sometimes the truth hurts. You may realize you are wasting your potential. You may realize certain relationships are draining your peace. You may realize your habits are destroying your discipline. But awareness is the beginning of change. Most people stay stuck because they never pause long enough to reflect honestly. Silence forces reflection. Reflection creates awareness. Awareness creates growth. That process is uncomfortable, but powerful. Many people think confidence comes from attention. But true confidence is built differently. Real confidence comes from keeping promises to yourself privately. Every time you wake up early when you don't feel like it, you build confidence. Every time you control emotional impulses, you build confidence. Every time you stay disciplined while nobody is watching, you build confidence. Confidence is earned internally before it becomes visible externally. That is why disciplined individuals often appear calm and grounded. Their confidence is not fake. It is built from repeated acts of self-control over time. The gym is a perfect example. Muscles are built quietly through repetition. Nobody becomes strong overnight. It happens through consistency and silence. Mental strength develops the same way. Every moment you resist laziness, you strengthen your discipline. Every moment you control anger, you strengthen emotional mastery. Every moment you stay focused despite distractions, you strengthen your mind. And eventually, your energy changes. People can sense individuals who possess inner power. There is something different about them. They do not desperately seek attention. They do not overreact emotionally. They do not constantly explain themselves. Their presence feels calm, stable, and controlled. That kind of energy intimidates weak-minded people because it cannot easily be manipulated. Think about it carefully. Society controls many people through fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of loneliness. Fear of judgment. Fear of missing out. Fear of being disliked. Those fears drive countless decisions daily. People stay silent to fit in. They tolerate disrespect to avoid abandonment. They pretend to agree with things they internally reject because they fear isolation. But the moment you become comfortable standing alone, those fears begin losing power over you. That is why solitude becomes dangerous. A person who is emotionally independent cannot easily be controlled through validation. They stop begging for approval. They stop chasing acceptance desperately. And once that happens, their entire mindset changes. You become freer. Freedom is not just financial. Real freedom is psychological. It is the ability to remain grounded internally regardless of external circumstances. Most people are emotionally imprisoned by external opinions. One negative comment ruins their mood. One rejection destroys their confidence. One criticism keeps them awake at night. Why? Because their identity depends too heavily on external approval. Stoicism teaches the opposite. It teaches that your worth should not fluctuate based on temporary opinions. People's opinions change constantly. Crowds are emotional. Society is unstable. Trends disappear quickly. If your identity depends entirely on external validation, you will spend your life emotionally exhausted. Inner power changes that. When you develop strong internal foundations, criticism affects you less. Rejection affects you less. Chaos affects you less. Because your stability no longer depends entirely on what happens externally. This does not mean becoming emotionless. Stoicism is not about suppressing feelings completely. It is about mastering them instead of becoming controlled by them. There is a huge difference. Weak minds react impulsively to every emotion. Strong minds observe emotions calmly before responding. That pause creates power. Most conflict in life comes from uncontrolled emotional reactions. Anger destroys relationships. Impulsiveness destroys opportunities. Emotional weakness destroys peace. But the Stoic trains calm awareness instead of impulsive reaction. Silence strengthens this ability because reflection slows the mind down. When you constantly surround yourself with noise, your thoughts become chaotic. But silence creates clarity. And clarity improves emotional control. This is why many successful people value solitude deeply. Not because they hate people, but because silence helps them think clearly. Some of the greatest ideas in history emerged during quiet moments. Some of the strongest individuals were shaped during lonely seasons nobody saw. Pain often becomes a teacher in silence. Many people distract themselves immediately whenever pain appears. Heartbreak, failure, rejection, disappointment. Instead of reflecting on those experiences, they escape into distractions. But Stoicism teaches that suffering can become wisdom if faced consciously. In silence, pain reveals lessons. Failure teaches humility. Rejection teaches independence. Loneliness teaches self-reliance. Discipline teaches confidence. Suffering teaches resilience. The strongest people are rarely built during easy seasons. They are shaped during difficult moments where they had no choice but to grow internally. Think about a sword being forged. Metal becomes stronger through fire and pressure. Human character develops the same way. Challenges refine disciplined individuals instead of destroying them. But only if they face those challenges consciously. Silence allows that process to happen. When you are constantly distracted, you miss the lessons hidden inside your struggles. But reflection transforms pain into wisdom. And wisdom creates power. The world constantly tells people to seek more externally. More attention. More followers. More approval. More possessions. But Stoicism reminds us that without internal peace, external success means very little. Many wealthy people remain miserable internally because they never mastered themselves. Many famous people remain insecure because validation addiction never truly ends. No amount of attention can permanently heal inner emptiness. That healing must happen internally. And internal healing requires stillness. Many people fear silence because silence exposes emotional wounds they buried long ago. But healing begins the moment you stop running from yourself. The Stoic learns to sit with discomfort calmly instead of escaping immediately. That ability creates emotional maturity. Emotionally immature people avoid pain constantly. Emotionally strong people face reality directly. Reality is not always comfortable. Life contains loss, uncertainty, failure, disappointment, and suffering. Stoicism does not deny those realities. It prepares you mentally for them. Inner power means becoming resilient enough to handle life without collapsing emotionally every time difficulty appears. And resilience is built quietly over time. Every disciplined action matters. Every moment of self-control matters. Every decision to remain calm matters. People often underestimate the power of small daily habits. But your habits shape your identity. If you constantly give in to distraction, your focus weakens. If you constantly seek validation, your independence weakens. If you constantly avoid discomfort, your discipline weakens. But if you consistently train your mind, everything changes slowly. Morning routines strengthen discipline. Reading strengthens wisdom. Reflection strengthens awareness. Solitude strengthens independence. Exercise strengthens resilience. Emotional control strengthens peace. Small actions repeated consistently create powerful minds over time. Most people want transformation instantly. But nature does not work that way. Trees grow slowly. Strength develops slowly. Wisdom develops slowly. Character develops slowly. Patience is part of inner power. The Stoic understands that meaningful growth requires consistency, not temporary motivation. Motivation fades quickly. Discipline remains. And discipline often grows strongest in silence. Because silence removes performance. When nobody is watching, your real character appears. Anyone can pretend publicly for attention. But private habits reveal who you truly are. Do you stay disciplined without applause? Do you keep improving without validation? Do you continue growing even when nobody notices? That is where real strength is built. Many people only work hard when others are watching. They only stay disciplined temporarily. But true Stoic strength is internal. It does not depend on external recognition. And eventually, something powerful happens when you live this way. You stop needing constant reassurance from the world. Your confidence becomes quieter but stronger. Your emotions become calmer. Your focus becomes sharper. Your standards rise. Your peace deepens. You begin protecting your energy differently. Not every argument deserves your attention. Not every opinion deserves your reaction. Not every person deserves unlimited access to your life. Inner power teaches boundaries naturally. Because once you value your peace, you stop tolerating chaos unnecessarily. You become more intentional with your time. More selective with your relationships. More disciplined with your habits. And while some people may misunderstand your quietness, it no longer bothers you deeply. Because your identity is no longer built entirely around external approval. That is emotional freedom. Many people spend their entire lives trying to impress others while neglecting themselves internally. But the Stoic focuses inward first. Master yourself before trying to control the world. That lesson changes everything. Because the hardest person to control is not other people. It is yourself. Controlling anger. Controlling fear. Controlling laziness. Controlling impulses. Controlling distractions. That is the real battle. And silence becomes the training ground for victory. The world may continue becoming louder, more distracted, and more chaotic. But you do not have to become chaotic internally. You can choose stillness. You can choose discipline. You can choose awareness. You can choose inner peace. And once you develop those qualities deeply, external circumstances lose much of their power over you. That is why Stoicism remains timeless. Because it teaches principles that create stable minds in unstable environments. The goal is not perfection. The goal is mastery over yourself. To remain calm when others panic. To remain disciplined when others become lazy. To remain focused when others become distracted. To remain grounded when others lose themselves emotionally. That is real power. So build yourself quietly. Improve yourself privately. Heal yourself deeply. Strengthen your mind daily. Do not fear solitude. Use it. Do not fear silence. Learn from it. Because the person who masters themselves in silence eventually becomes unstoppable in the world. Most people think respect is something you demand with anger, force, or intimidation. But real respect doesn't come from shouting louder. It comes from mastering yourself. Stoic philosophers understood this deeply. They knew that the world is filled with difficult people, people who mock you, ignore you, underestimate you, interrupt you, and treat your kindness like weakness. But they also knew something powerful. The moment you let disrespect control your emotions, you hand your power away. If you constantly react emotionally every time someone disrespects you, you become easy to manipulate. Your peace disappears. Your confidence weakens. Your focus breaks. And eventually, other people begin controlling your emotional state without even trying. That's why Stoicism teaches emotional discipline, inner strength, and calm authority. Not because life is easy, but because difficult people are everywhere. In this video, we'll uncover 6 powerful Stoic ways to deal with people who don't respect you. These lessons will help you protect your peace, command silent respect, and become mentally unshakable. Watch until the end, because the final lesson is the one most people never learn, and it changes everything. Number 1. Stop trying to force people to respect you. One of the biggest mistakes people make is begging for respect emotionally. They argue too much. They explain themselves endlessly. They try to prove their worth to people who already decided not to value them. But Stoics understood something important. Respect forced is never real respect. The more desperate you appear for validation, the weaker you look in the eyes of toxic people. Weak-minded people can sense emotional dependency immediately. The moment they realize your confidence depends on their approval, they gain power over you. That's why Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that he could not control how others behaved, only how he responded. Think about it carefully. The lion never wastes time convincing sheep that he's powerful. His presence alone speaks. In the same way, truly confident people don't chase respect desperately. They embody it naturally through discipline, composure, and self-respect. Many people lose respect because they tolerate things that violate their dignity. They laugh when insulted just to fit in. They stay silent when constantly mistreated. They allow people to cross boundaries again and again because they fear rejection. But every time you abandon yourself to please others, you teach people how little you value yourself. Stoicism teaches that self-respect comes first. Once you deeply respect yourself, your energy changes completely. You stop seeking permission to exist confidently. You stop shrinking yourself to make insecure people comfortable. And ironically, that's when many people begin respecting you automatically. The truth is harsh but powerful. Some people will never respect you no matter how kind you are. No matter how helpful you are. No matter how patient you are. And that's okay. Your job is not to win everyone's approval. Your job is to remain grounded in your values and protect your inner peace. Number 2. Control your emotions when provoked. Disrespect often comes as a test. Some people intentionally provoke you because they want an emotional reaction. They want to see you lose control. They want your anger, your frustration, your breakdown. Because emotional people are easier to manipulate. This is why Stoics valued calmness like a superpower. When you remain composed under pressure, you immediately become difficult to control. Most people react impulsively. They explode with anger. They argue emotionally. They defend themselves aggressively. But the Stoic does something different. He pauses. He observes. He responds with intention instead of emotion. Imagine someone insults you publicly. Most people instantly feel embarrassed or angry. Their ego gets wounded. But a Stoic understands something deeper. Another person's behavior reveals their character, not yours. If someone insults you unfairly, they expose their lack of discipline and maturity. You don't need to join them in chaos. One of the greatest forms of power is emotional restraint. Not weakness. Not silence out of fear. But controlled strength. The ability to stay calm while others lose control creates psychological dominance. People expect emotional reactions. They become uncomfortable when they cannot control your state of mind. Think about water during a storm. The surface may shake violently, but deep beneath, the ocean remains calm. That is the Stoic mindset. No matter what happens externally, your inner world remains stable. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions completely. Stoicism is not about becoming cold or emotionless. It's about refusing to let temporary emotions destroy long-term peace. Anger often feels powerful in the moment, but it usually leads to regret. Calm thinking leads to wiser decisions. When someone disrespects you, pause before reacting. Ask yourself, Is this worth my peace? Is this person important enough to control my emotions today? Most of the time, the answer is no. And once you realize that, their words lose power over you. Number 3. Set boundaries without guilt. Many people are disrespected because they never establish boundaries. They tolerate toxic behavior repeatedly because they fear confrontation. They say yes when they want to say no. They allow emotional manipulation because they don't want to disappoint anyone. Over time, people begin treating them however they want. Stoicism teaches that boundaries are necessary for inner peace. You cannot live peacefully while constantly allowing others to violate your energy, time, and dignity. Healthy boundaries are not selfish. They are self-respect in action. A person who never says no eventually loses themselves completely. Toxic people love individuals with weak boundaries because they know they can take advantage of them endlessly. They borrow your time, drain your energy, disrespect your kindness, and then expect more. The Stoic understands that protecting peace sometimes requires distance. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your life. Some people only bring negativity, drama, and emotional exhaustion. And if someone repeatedly disrespects you after clear communication, reducing contact may be necessary. Remember this carefully. Setting boundaries will upset people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. When you finally begin respecting yourself, some people will accuse you of changing. They may call you rude, distant, selfish, or cold. But often, what they truly mean is this: they can no longer control you the way they used to. You do not need to explain your boundaries endlessly. A simple and calm response is enough. The more emotionally defensive you become, the weaker your boundary appears. Calm confidence is far more powerful than emotional over-explaining. Learn to walk away from conversations that destroy your peace. Learn to say no without guilt. Learn to stop chasing people who constantly disrespect your effort. Your energy is valuable. Your time is valuable. And your peace is extremely valuable. Protect it wisely. Number 4. Stop taking disrespect personally. This lesson changes everything once you truly understand it. Most disrespect has little to do with you. It often reflects the inner pain, insecurity, jealousy, or emotional immaturity of the other person. Hurt people hurt people. Insecure people attack confidence. Weak people mock discipline because it reminds them of their own lack of control. When someone constantly disrespects others, they reveal their internal chaos. Stoics understood human nature deeply. They knew people act according to their level of awareness. Some people are consumed by ego. Others by anger. Others by envy. Expecting wisdom from emotionally immature people only creates disappointment. Imagine a barking dog. You don't take it personally because you understand it's simply behaving according to its nature. In the same way, many toxic people act from unconscious habits, emotional wounds, and unresolved pain. Their disrespect says more about their condition than your worth. This perspective frees you emotionally. Instead of obsessing over every insult or criticism, you begin observing people differently. You stop internalizing negativity automatically. You realize that not every opinion deserves emotional attention. One of the greatest forms of emotional freedom is understanding that you do not need everyone to understand you, like you, or approve of you. The moment your self-worth depends entirely on external validation, your peace becomes fragile. Social media has made this problem worse. Many people become emotionally destroyed by strangers' opinions online. One negative comment ruins their entire mood. But Stoicism reminds us that opinions are temporary and uncontrollable. If you constantly chase universal approval, you will lose yourself completely. Strong people listen to constructive criticism calmly, but they ignore meaningless negativity. They know the difference between useful feedback and emotional noise. Not every insult deserves a response. Sometimes silence is the strongest answer. The more secure you become internally, the less power external disrespect has over you. That is real freedom. Number 5. Build silent confidence through discipline. Real respect is earned quietly through consistency, discipline, and self-mastery. Not through loud words. Not through fake toughness. Not through trying to intimidate everyone around you. Stoics believe that character speaks louder than appearance. Anyone can pretend to be confident temporarily, but discipline reveals who you truly are. The way you carry yourself daily matters. The way you handle pressure matters. The promises you keep to yourself matter. When you wake up early consistently, your mind becomes stronger. When you control your impulses, your confidence grows. When you work hard without constant validation, your energy changes. People naturally sense disciplined individuals because discipline creates silent authority. Most people today seek shortcuts to confidence. They want instant respect without inner growth. But genuine confidence is built slowly through difficult actions repeated consistently. Every time you do something uncomfortable willingly, you strengthen your mind. Every time you remain calm under pressure, you increase emotional power. Every time you choose discipline over excuses, you build self-respect. And self-respect changes everything. Because once you genuinely respect yourself, you stop tolerating situations that destroy your dignity. You stop begging for attention. You stop competing for approval. Your presence becomes calmer, stronger, and more grounded. Think about highly respected individuals you admire. Usually, they are not the loudest people in the room. They don't constantly seek attention. Their confidence feels natural because it comes from internal stability, not external validation. This is why Stoicism focuses so heavily on daily habits. The goal is not perfection. The goal is mastery over yourself. Because the hardest person to control is not other people, it is yourself. When you master your emotions, habits, reactions, and mindset, disrespect affects you less and less. You become mentally unshakable. And ironically, people begin respecting you more because they can sense your inner strength. Number 6. Be willing to walk away. This is perhaps the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the strongest response to disrespect is not fighting harder. It's leaving. Walking away peacefully from toxic situations requires enormous strength. Many people stay in harmful relationships, friendships, workplaces, and environments because they fear loneliness, rejection, or starting over. But Stoics understood something powerful. Peace is more valuable than attachment. If someone repeatedly disrespects you despite clear communication, constant tolerance will not magically change them. Sometimes distance is the healthiest solution. Many people confuse attachment with love. They continue tolerating disrespect because they hope the other person will eventually change. But hope without boundaries becomes self-destruction. You cannot heal in environments that constantly damage your mental peace. Walking away is not weakness. It is wisdom. It means you value your mental and emotional well-being enough to protect it. It means you refuse to keep sacrificing your dignity for temporary comfort. There comes a moment in life when you realize that constantly explaining your value to the wrong people is exhausting. The Stoic chooses peace over endless emotional chaos. Not because he hates others, but because he understands the importance of protecting his inner world. And here is something important. When you stop chasing toxic people, you create space for healthier connections. You begin attracting people who respect your boundaries, appreciate your energy, and value your presence genuinely. Never be afraid to outgrow environments that no longer align with your peace. Some chapters of life must end for new ones to begin. Some people are lessons, not lifelong companions. And that is okay. At the end of the day, respect starts with you. The world often mirrors the standards you set for yourself. If you constantly abandon your own dignity to please others, people will notice. But when you carry yourself with calm confidence, emotional discipline, and self-respect, your entire presence changes. Stoicism is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming stronger than your emotions. It is about refusing to let toxic people control your inner peace. It is about standing firm in your values even when the world becomes chaotic around you. So the next time someone disrespects you, remember these 6 lessons. Stop forcing respect. Control your emotions. Set boundaries. Don't take everything personally. Build silent confidence through discipline. And most importantly, be willing to walk away from what destroys your peace. Because true power is not found in controlling others. True power is found in controlling yourself. Please subscribe for more. There is a kind of power that the world rarely understands. It's not loud. It doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't chase validation, applause, or approval. It moves in silence. It grows in solitude. And the people who master it become almost impossible to break. Most people are terrified of being alone. The moment silence enters their lives, they panic. They rush to distractions, relationships, noise, social media, and constant attention because being alone forces them to face themselves. But Stoic philosophers understood something most people never realize. Solitude is not weakness. Solitude is power. The strongest minds in history were built in isolation. Warriors trained alone. Philosophers reflected alone. Leaders made difficult decisions alone. Growth often happens away from crowds, away from noise, and away from constant validation. Because when you are alone, you finally meet your real self without distractions. In today's world, people are addicted to attention. Everyone wants to be seen, liked, followed, and accepted. But dependence on constant validation creates emotional weakness. The moment your happiness depends entirely on others, your peace becomes fragile. Your confidence disappears whenever people reject you. Your emotions become controlled by opinions. And slowly, you lose yourself trying to fit into a world that constantly changes. Stoicism teaches a completely different mindset. It teaches that your greatest strength comes from within. Not from popularity. Not from attention. Not from external approval. Real power begins the moment you become comfortable standing alone. Many people misunderstand solitude. They think being alone means loneliness. But loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. Loneliness is emptiness. Solitude is self-connection. Loneliness feels like abandonment. Solitude feels like freedom. A lonely person hates being alone because they feel incomplete. A Stoic values solitude because they discover completeness within themselves. Think about the ocean during a storm. On the surface, chaos exists everywhere. Waves crash violently. Winds scream endlessly. But deep below the surface, everything remains calm and still. That is the Stoic mind. The world may become loud and chaotic, but internally there is peace. And that peace is built in moments of solitude. Most people avoid silence because silence exposes unresolved emotions. The moment distractions disappear, buried insecurities rise to the surface. Fear appears. Anxiety appears. Regret appears. And instead of confronting those emotions, many people escape into constant stimulation. Endless scrolling. Endless conversations. Endless noise. Anything to avoid facing themselves honestly. But the Stoic does the opposite. The Stoic enters solitude willingly because that is where clarity is found. In silence, you begin understanding your habits, fears, weaknesses, and desires. You begin observing your own mind. And once you understand yourself deeply, other people lose the ability to control you easily. One of the greatest powers a person can develop is emotional independence. The ability to remain peaceful even when alone. The ability to enjoy your own presence. The ability to sit in silence without feeling empty. Because once you stop needing constant attention from the world, you become mentally free. Look carefully at society. Many people stay in toxic relationships simply because they fear being alone. They tolerate disrespect because silence scares them more than suffering. They remain surrounded by fake friends because they confuse company with connection. But being surrounded by people does not always mean you are loved. Sometimes crowds can make you feel even more alone. Stoicism teaches quality over quantity. One peaceful moment alone is more valuable than endless time spent with people who drain your energy. Protecting your peace becomes easier once you stop fearing solitude. Because fear of loneliness is what keeps many people trapped in unhealthy environments. When you become comfortable alone, you stop begging for acceptance. You stop tolerating disrespect just to avoid isolation. You stop shrinking yourself to keep others around. Your standards rise because your self-worth no longer depends entirely on external validation. And that changes everything. Powerful people are often misunderstood because they no longer seek constant approval. They don't desperately chase attention. They don't force themselves into every conversation. They don't feel the need to explain themselves endlessly. Their confidence comes from inner stability, not social validation. There is something deeply intimidating about a person who enjoys solitude. Because society cannot easily manipulate someone who is emotionally independent. Advertisements lose power over them. Peer pressure loses power over them. Toxic relationships lose power over them. Why? Because they no longer fear standing alone. Fear is one of the greatest tools used to control people. Fear of rejection. Fear of judgment. Fear of abandonment. Fear of loneliness. Most people sacrifice their authenticity because they fear being disliked. They wear masks to fit into groups that don't truly value them. But the Stoic understands that peace is more important than approval. Marcus Aurelius once spent countless hours reflecting in solitude despite being emperor of Rome. Even surrounded by power and responsibility, he understood the importance of inner stillness. He knew the external world constantly changes, but a disciplined mind remains stable. Solitude sharpens your mind. When you spend time alone intentionally, your thinking becomes clearer. You stop absorbing endless opinions from others and begin hearing your own thoughts again. Many people don't even know what they truly believe anymore because they are constantly influenced by the noise around them. Silence reveals truth. And truth can be uncomfortable. That is why most people avoid it. But growth only begins when honesty enters your life. In solitude, excuses become harder to maintain. You begin seeing your habits clearly, your weaknesses clearly, your wasted potential clearly. And while that can feel uncomfortable at first, it is also the beginning of transformation. The strongest version of yourself is not built during easy moments surrounded by comfort. It is built during quiet battles nobody sees. The early mornings when you choose discipline instead of laziness. The nights you continue working while others waste time. The moments you resist emotional impulses. The moments you keep going without applause. That is the hidden power of solitude. It removes distractions and forces you to build yourself from within. Modern society constantly glorifies being busy, social, and connected all the time. But constant connection can destroy self-awareness. If you are never alone with your thoughts, how will you truly know yourself? How will you understand your purpose? How will you discover who you are beneath external expectations? Some of the greatest breakthroughs in life happen in silence. Ideas emerge in silence. Healing happens in silence. Strength grows in silence. Wisdom develops in silence. Yet most people run from silence because they mistake stillness for emptiness. The Stoic sees stillness differently. Stillness is strength. Calmness is power. Emotional control is power. The ability to remain grounded while the world becomes chaotic is one of the rarest abilities today. Many people are addicted to stimulation because silence feels uncomfortable. They need music constantly playing, notifications constantly appearing, conversations constantly happening. But overstimulation weakens mental clarity. A distracted mind becomes reactive, emotional, and exhausted. Solitude restores focus. When you spend intentional time alone, your priorities become clearer. You begin recognizing which relationships actually matter. You begin seeing which habits are destroying your peace. You begin noticing how much energy you waste chasing things that don't truly fulfill you. And eventually, something powerful happens. You stop needing the world's permission to feel valuable. Your confidence becomes internal instead of external. That is real strength. Most people confuse confidence with loudness. But true confidence is often quiet. It is calm. It is grounded. A truly confident person does not constantly seek attention because they already know their worth internally. Think about nature. The mountain does not scream to prove its strength. The ocean does not beg for validation. The sun does not ask permission to shine. Their presence alone speaks. In the same way, people who master solitude carry a quiet energy that feels powerful without needing words. This does not mean isolating yourself from everyone forever. Stoicism is not about hating people. Humans naturally need meaningful connection. But there is a huge difference between healthy connection and emotional dependency. A Stoic can love deeply without losing themselves completely. They can enjoy relationships without becoming controlled by them emotionally. That balance is powerful. Because emotionally dependent people often become desperate. They tolerate disrespect to avoid abandonment. They become anxious whenever attention disappears. They lose themselves trying to hold on to others. But emotional independence creates stability. When you learn to enjoy your own company, relationships become healthier because they are no longer built entirely on fear. You no longer need people to complete you. Instead, you choose connections that genuinely align with your values and peace. One of the biggest reasons solitude builds strength is because it teaches self-reliance. When you face life alone at times, you discover abilities you never knew you had. You become more resilient, more resourceful, more disciplined. Challenges stop terrifying you because you learn that you can survive difficult moments without constant support. Pain also transforms differently in solitude. Many people distract themselves from pain immediately instead of learning from it. But Stoicism teaches that suffering can become wisdom if you face it consciously. In silence, pain teaches lessons. Heartbreak teaches lessons. Failure teaches lessons. Rejection teaches lessons. Some of the strongest people you will ever meet were shaped by lonely seasons nobody saw. Seasons where they had to rebuild themselves quietly while the world kept moving. Seasons where they learned to become their own source of strength. There is a dangerous illusion in modern culture that happiness comes from external achievements alone. More followers, more attention, more validation, more relationships, more success. But many people achieve those things and still feel empty internally because they never developed inner peace. Stoicism teaches that peace begins inside. Without inner stability, no amount of external success will satisfy you for long. That is why solitude matters so deeply. It reconnects you with yourself. When you sit alone long enough, you begin questioning everything. What truly matters to you? What kind of person do you want to become? What distractions are wasting your life? What fears are controlling your decisions? Those questions are uncomfortable, but they create transformation. Most people spend years avoiding themselves. They know everybody else deeply but barely understand their own mind. They can describe celebrities, trends, and strangers online, yet they cannot sit quietly with themselves for 10 minutes without feeling restless. That restlessness reveals dependence on external stimulation. The Stoic trains the opposite. Instead of escaping inward discomfort, they face it directly. They observe their thoughts calmly. They examine their emotions carefully. And through that process, self-mastery begins developing. Self-mastery is the highest form of power, because controlling yourself is far harder than controlling others. Anyone can react emotionally. Anyone can lose control under pressure. But remaining calm, disciplined, and mentally centered requires strength. Solitude also teaches patience. In a world addicted to instant gratification, patience becomes rare. Everyone wants immediate results, immediate attention, immediate success. But meaningful growth takes time. Trees grow slowly. Muscles grow slowly. Wisdom grows slowly. Character grows slowly. When you spend time alone working on yourself quietly, you stop chasing instant validation. You begin focusing on long-term growth instead of temporary attention. And over time, your entire mindset changes. The world often underestimates quiet people because silence is misunderstood. But silence can hide enormous strength. Many disciplined individuals move quietly because they are focused on building themselves rather than constantly announcing their intentions. There is also freedom in becoming less emotionally available to chaos. Not every argument deserves your energy. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every conflict deserves your reaction. Solitude helps you recognize what truly matters. The more time you spend understanding yourself, the less easily manipulated you become. You stop following crowds blindly. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop allowing temporary emotions to control your decisions. And that independence creates power. Some people fear solitude because they associate it with rejection. But solitude is not rejection when chosen consciously. It becomes a sacred space for growth. A place where your mind resets. A place where clarity returns. A place where emotional wounds heal slowly. Healing often requires silence because constant noise prevents reflection. If you never pause long enough to process your emotions, pain remains buried inside you. Stoicism encourages awareness, not suppression. It teaches you to face reality honestly without becoming consumed by it emotionally. And here is the truth most people never realize. The relationship you have with yourself shapes every other relationship in your life. If you hate being alone, you may become emotionally dependent on others for happiness. But if you genuinely value your own presence, you enter relationships from a place of strength instead of desperation. That changes the quality of your entire life. A person who enjoys solitude cannot easily be emotionally blackmailed. They cannot easily be controlled through fear of abandonment. They remain grounded because their peace comes from within. This is why alone is power. Not because isolation itself is magical, but because solitude develops inner strength when used correctly. It builds self-awareness, emotional discipline, mental clarity, independence, resilience, peace, and those qualities create an unshakable mindset. The world constantly tells you to seek more external attention, but Stoicism reminds you to look inward first. Because if you conquer your own mind, external chaos loses much of its power over you. At the end of the day, your relationship with yourself is the one relationship that follows you forever. People may leave. Circumstances may change. Success may rise and fall. But you will always live with your own mind. That is why learning to enjoy your own company is one of the greatest investments you can make. Do not fear solitude. Use it. Grow through it. Heal through it. Strengthen yourself through it. Because the person who masters being alone gains something the world cannot easily take away: inner peace. And inner peace is the ultimate power. Please subscribe.